He said it was just a guy's trip, a weekend to decompress. Maybe fish, maybe golf. I didn't ask questions. I packed his bag, kissed him goodbye. 2 days later, I was staring at a bank app showing zero. Every single dollar gone. My husband had vanished and taken our entire life savings with him. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have guessed, is that I'd been keeping a secret of my own. And unlike his, mine was about to change everything. I used to think routine was a good thing. You know, familiarity, stability, predictability. I thought those were signs of a strong marriage. Looking back now, I realize routine is what happens when connection dies quietly. Our mornings were always the same. He liked his coffee black, no sugar. I'd make it for him at 6:30 on the dot, even though he was perfectly capable of doing it himself. He'd scroll through his phone at the counter, barely saying 10 words, then leave for work with a distracted kiss on my cheek. Sometimes he forgot the kiss. Sometimes I pretended not to notice. We had 2 kids, a mortgage, joint savings, matching travel mugs. The kind of life you post about to make it look better than it feels. From the outside, we looked fine, boring, maybe, but fine. The kind of couple that shows up together to soccer games and barbecues, but sleeps back to back at night. Safe, secure, flatline. So when he told me about the guy's trip, I didn't even blink. In fact, I encouraged it. Go, I said. You deserve a break. He'd been tense for weeks. Said work was suffocating. Said he needed time with the boys. No phones, no family, just the wilderness and some cold beer. It was something they did every year, but this time he seemed more deliberate. Packing days in advance. Checking his phone a lot. Printing things. That one got me. Who prints things anymore? Still, I didn't question him. I packed him snacks. I folded his hoodie. I reminded him to take sunscreen. That's what wives do, right? We support. We trust. We ignore the tiny knots in our stomachs that whisper, something feels off. He hugged the kids tighter than usual that morning. That I remember. I remember standing in the driveway, waving, watching the car disappear down the block. I remember how empty the house felt once he left, as if something more than just him had gone missing. I didn't know then that he wasn't planning to come back. That he'd already made withdrawals, not just from the bank, but from our life, our vows, our future. I didn't know that this guy's trip was actually an exit strategy, and that while I was folding his socks and writing him little notes, he was draining every account we'd ever built together. But that's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't knock first. It walks through the front door, smiles at your children, and kisses you goodbye on the way out. The first sign something was off didn't feel dramatic. It felt annoying. I was standing in line at the grocery store, 2 cranky kids, 1 melting popsicle, and a cart full of overpriced produce. When I swiped my card, it got declined. I laughed, actually, out loud, told the cashier it was a glitch, and handed over my backup. But on the drive home, that little knot in my stomach started tightening again. I pulled into the driveway, turned off the engine, and opened our banking app, expecting to see a tech error, maybe a duplicate charge or a system delay. But that wasn't what I saw. What I saw was a balance of $0 on our joint account. At first I thought, there's no way. Maybe I'd logged into the wrong account. Maybe I'd hit a filter or selected a closed card. Nope. I refreshed. Logged out. Logged back in. Switched from mobile to desktop. Still 0. Still nothing. Then I checked the transaction history. That's when I stopped breathing. There were multiple withdrawals, large ones, spread out over the last 48 hours. Every move was just under the limit that would have triggered a flag or required my signature. I saw the pattern immediately. He knew exactly what he was doing. That's when I called him. Straight to voicemail. Texted him. Hey, weird issue with the account. Can you check? No response. 5 minutes later. Seriously, I'm getting declined. Where's the money? Nothing. I tried again. And again. Then I called his best friend, Doug, the one he always said was terrible with directions, and probably forgot the campsite name. Doug didn't pick up either. But his wife did. Hey, Clara, she said. I thought they postponed the trip. Weren't they going next month? I remember standing in my kitchen, staring at the backsplash like it might morph into an answer. What do you mean, postponed? I mean, she said. Doug's at home, watching the kids. He said the trip got pushed because of weather or something. Why? Where's your husband's name? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. That was the moment. Right there. Not the bank balance, not the empty gas tank, not even the silent phone. It was that moment when I realized he wasn't with friends, he wasn't in a tent, and he wasn't coming back. He had disappeared, vanished into thin air. I felt the heat drain from my body. That cold, dizzying surge when your brain starts to connect the dots faster than your emotions can keep up. You know the moment before a panic attack hits. That second of silence in your own head before it explodes. That's where I was. I opened the closet. Half his clothes were gone. Favorite jacket? Gone. Hiking boots? Gone. Laptop? Gone. Toothbrush? Still there, which somehow made it worse. I stood there, staring at the empty hanger where his blue hoodie used to be, and the sick realization set in. He planned this. He left in stages, pulled out the money slowly, took things piece by piece so it wouldn't look suspicious, kissed our kids goodbye like he was going to CVS. I don't remember the rest of that day. Just flashes. The kids fighting over snacks, me staring blankly at the TV, the untouched dinner on the stove. At some point, I opened his sock drawer and found a crumpled envelope. Inside were 2 printed plane tickets, one with his name. The other, a woman's. Different last name. Same destination. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I wasn't the wife anymore. I was the alibi, the camouflage, the placeholder in a life he'd already checked out of. He didn't just leave me. He erased me. Quietly. Strategically. And if he thought I'd just fall apart and vanish like he did, he had no idea who he was dealing with. It's strange how quickly your entire life can feel like a lie. One day you're a wife with a shared future, picking out throw pillows and Googling weekend getaways. The next, you're standing in your kitchen with a bank statement in one hand and proof of another woman in the other, wondering how long you've been living in a house built on fiction. I didn't cry at first. People always expect tears, but I think some betrayals are too deep for that. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything soft inside me and left just the shell to figure out how to keep functioning. I spent that night lying awake, not in our bed but on the couch. Our bed felt contaminated. I stared at the ceiling and tried to do the math backwards. When did he start planning this? When did he stop loving me? Was it that business trip last fall? The one where he came back weirdly quiet and wouldn't look me in the eye? Or was it earlier, when he started showering in the guest bathroom for better water pressure? The signs were there in hindsight. His sudden obsession with budgeting. The way he'd take work calls outside. His phone always face down. It wasn't one big red flag. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. Tiny things I brushed off as stress or routine. Because we trust the people we love, even when they don't deserve it. The worst part, the kids. I had to keep pretending everything was fine for them. I still had to make lunches, sign field trip slips, show up for parent-teacher night with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I'd tuck them in at night and wonder, what story am I going to have to tell them about their father? Because how do you explain to a child that someone who was supposed to love them unconditionally just walked away? And then came the guilt. Not for him. No, never for him. For me. For being so blind. For not seeing it sooner. For making excuses. For still folding his damn shirts while he was probably lying in someone else's bed. I broke down one night while folding laundry. I held one of his t-shirts, just a plain, stupid gray tee, and I swear it felt radioactive. I couldn't even explain why. Maybe because I remember the last time I saw him wear it, at our daughter's recital. He sat there clapping like the proud dad, laughing with me on the drive home, holding my hand at red lights. And now I couldn't tell if any of it was real. That's when I called my best friend, Melissa. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not even her. She came over in sweatpants and no makeup, holding 2 bottles of wine and a look that said just say the word. I didn't even have to explain much. Just handed her my phone, showed her the tickets. Her face went pale. Then she said something that knocked the breath out of me. "Clara! I saw him last week." I blinked. "What?" "At the gas station. He wasn't alone. I assumed it was work-related or something, but now." She trailed off, but she didn't need to finish. I knew what she saw. I knew it in my gut. Some woman in the passenger seat. Sunglasses. Smiling. Comfortable enough to be casual, close enough to be intimate. So that was it. He wasn't just gone. He was already replaced. Swapped me out like a car lease. New model. Fresh start. No mileage. It's funny, the idea of being heartbroken implies your heart still works the way it used to. Mine didn't. Not anymore. It was colder now. Cleaner. Like something had been cauterized. He thought he'd broken me. And maybe he did, for a minute. But here's what he didn't count on. That broken doesn't mean destroyed. It means stripped down. Rebuilt. Sharpened. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't confused. I wasn't even hurt, not in the way he wanted me to be. I was clear. And clarity, that's more dangerous than rage. Because now I wasn't asking why he left. I was asking what he left behind. There's something funny about being underestimated. It stings at first, sure. But eventually, it becomes your greatest weapon. My husband thought I was blind. Passive. Soft. The kind of woman who would quietly crumble while he disappeared into the sunset with another woman and our life savings. What he never understood is that softness isn't the opposite of strength. It's just strength in a lower register. And I had been quiet for a long, long time. But not blind. See, when you've been living with a man who lies with a straight face, you learn to read between the lines. You learn to watch body language, tone, gaps in stories, work trips that don't add up. You don't always confront. Sometimes you just observe, and quietly you start preparing. Not because you're certain they'll leave, but because you need to be ready in case they do. And I had been ready. For years, actually. Let me tell you a secret. I had my own account. It started small, just $50 here and there. A birthday check I didn't cash right away. A freelance project he didn't know about. Refunds. Gift cards I turned into cash. I squirreled it away like a woman building a fire escape. Not because I didn't trust him, but because something inside me knew I might need to save myself one day. By the time he vanished, I had just over $32,000 in that account. Not millions, but enough to not drown. And that wasn't the only thing he didn't know. You remember that rental property we invested in a few years ago? The one in my sister's name to keep it simple. Well, I had quietly added my name to that deed 6 months after the paperwork was signed. Took one lunch meeting and a notary. He never asked. I never offered. Because when you're a woman who's been gaslit long enough, you learn how to move in silence. He thought he took everything. But he didn't take that property. He didn't touch my stash. And this is my personal favorite. He didn't even realize I still had access to the email address he used for private financial matters. The one he thought I'd forgotten about. The one that gave me every transaction alert from the new accounts he set up. Offshore. Untraceable, maybe, to someone who doesn't know where to look. But I knew. Oh, I knew. So I did what he never expected. I stayed calm. Collected. I didn't text him. I didn't beg. I didn't even tell him I knew. Instead, I hired a lawyer. Quietly. She was sharp, expensive, and 3 steps ahead of every move I hadn't even made yet. She reviewed the financial trail, the withdrawals, the transfer patterns. She said, "We can freeze some of this. You just have to be fast." So we filed a motion, launched a formal investigation. And when I finally did send him a message, it wasn't what he expected. It wasn't, "Why did you do this?" It was, "I know everything, and I suggest you get your own lawyer." No screaming, no sobbing, just a calm, cold warning from a woman he thought he could erase. I wasn't asking for closure. I was coming for consequences. And here's the thing about men like him, they're confident right up until they realize you're smarter than they gave you credit for. The second he figured out I wasn't just some broken housewife on the floor, but a woman who had receipts, leverage, and a damn good attorney, he panicked. Started calling, texting. First, it was fake concern. "We should talk about this like adults." Then came the guilt trip. "You're overreacting." And finally, the fear. "Please don't take legal action. Let's work this out privately." Too late. He had taken money, time, and pieces of my peace I'll never get back. But now I had something more powerful than any of that, control. He didn't vanish. He got caught. And I was just getting started. He tried to come back, you know. That's the part that still makes me laugh, quietly, bitterly. Like a punchline I didn't ask for. After all the silence, the cowardice, the disappearing act, he had the audacity to think he could just walk back into my life. Not because he missed me, not because he was sorry, but because he finally realized I wasn't waiting for him. It started with a phone call I didn't answer. Then an email. Subject line, "Can we talk?" No apology. No explanation. Just a weak request from a man who suddenly found out he wasn't as untouchable as he thought. I didn't respond. I let him sweat. When we finally did speak, it was in a lawyer's office. Neutral ground. Fluorescent lighting. A long conference table between us, and two attorneys at either end like referees at a chess match. He looked older. Grayer. That smug, easy confidence he always wore like cologne was gone. He was pale and twitchy, tapping a pen like it could undo everything he'd done. I walked in wearing the blue blazer he once said made me look too serious. I wore it like armor. Sat down across from him, folded my hands neatly, and said nothing. Let the silence choke him. "You didn't have to do all this," he said finally, gesturing around like the legal system was just some big overreaction on my part. "We could have figured it out privately." Privately! I tilted my head. Like how you emptied our savings behind my back. Like the tickets to Mexico with your girlfriend? That kind of private. His jaw clenched. The lawyer next to me, bless her sharp, merciless soul, slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts, transaction logs, timestamps, emails, passport applications. I'd built a case with the same precision he used to dismantle our marriage. For every lie, I had a receipt. For every theft, a digital breadcrumb. He skimmed the papers. His face crumbled, then hardened. "You're trying to ruin me." "No," I said calmly. "You did that yourself. I'm just making sure you don't get away with it. And here's where it gets good. The house. Still in both our names. The rental property. Mine now, thanks to a legal loophole he never noticed. The money he stashed overseas. Some of it was tied to shared funds, which meant I had a claim. He tried to vanish and start over, but he made a fatal mistake. He underestimated how much I was paying attention. My lawyer explained our terms. He'd return what he took, plus interest. He'd surrender his rights to certain assets. He'd sign a binding agreement preventing him from contacting me directly again. And if he refused, we'd pursue fraud, asset theft, custodial abandonment. He didn't speak for a long time. Just stared at the pages like they were in a language he couldn't read. "I thought you loved me," he muttered. It wasn't a question. It was a plea. "I did," I said. "And I love the life we built. But you lit it on fire. Now I'm just making sure I don't burn with it." He signed. I watched his hand shake while he wrote his name on the line, surrendering what he tried to steal. No raised voices. No dramatics. Just quiet, calculated justice. That moment, watching the man who tried to ruin me realize he had no control left, wasn't satisfying in the way I thought it would be. It wasn't fireworks. It was peace. Like finally putting down a weight you forgot you were carrying. He left the room first. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because in that moment, I wasn't the woman he walked out on. I wasn't the wife he betrayed. I wasn't the victim. I was the consequence. There's something poetic about watching a man fall apart in real time, especially when he built his entire persona around control. After the legal meeting, he tried to maintain what little pride he had left. He played the part of the wounded but dignified ex, posted vague inspirational quotes online, told mutual friends that we'd grown apart, left out the part where he tried to rob me blind and flee the country with someone who didn't even know his real middle name. But the thing about consequences, they don't just knock, they move in. Word got out fast. Not because I told people. I didn't have to. Court filings are public, and apparently, karma has a pretty loud mouth. His new girlfriend, gone. Took one look at the financial mess he was now legally responsible for and evaporated like a ghost. Apparently, she wasn't in it for love. She was in it for the fantasy. And fantasies don't come with lawyers and lien notices. His job, they found out too. You'd be amazed what happens when an HR department gets a subpoena for payroll records in a fraud case. Suddenly, the golden boy becomes a liability. He wasn't fired, not technically. Just let go during restructuring. But we both know what that means. He moved in with his cousin, the one with the weird cat and the futon. I know this because he accidentally Venmo'd me instead of his landlord for rent. The memo said March payment. I didn't refund it. I donated it to a domestic violence shelter instead. Seemed fitting. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding, quietly but confidently. I kept things simple. Sold the house. Took my share, moved into something smaller but mine. The rental property. Generating income. The secret savings account. Growing. And the kids. Thriving. They don't ask about him as much anymore. I never poison the well. I just tell the truth in doses they can understand. Daddy made a choice. And we're going to be okay. Because we are. We're better than okay. I started running again. Not metaphorically, literally. I get up before sunrise and put on my shoes and just go. Not to escape, but to move forward. Every mile is mine. Every drop of sweat is mine. No one else gets credit for my recovery. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't trusted my gut. If I'd believed the lies, just a little longer. If I hadn't quietly prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. But then I remember. He left thinking he held the power. He walked out the door believing he'd won, that I was weak and he was free. But freedom without integrity is just chaos. And weakness, well, turns out mine was just patience in disguise. I didn't ruin his life. He did that all by himself. I just stopped cleaning up after him. It's funny how quiet your life becomes once you stop trying to prove anything to anyone. I used to live in constant noise. His moods, our bills, the weight of pretending things were fine. I carried it all like it was my duty, like keeping the illusion alive was the same as keeping the family together. But illusions are heavy, and when they finally shatter, what's left is a silence that feels almost holy. Now my mornings are mine. I wake up without that pit in my stomach. The one that used to whisper, "Is something wrong? Or are you just paranoid again?" I drink my coffee slowly. I let the light come in through the window, and I don't rush to answer anyone's texts. There's no one waiting to drain me with excuses, or guilt, or invisible expectations. Just me, and the version of my life I rebuilt brick by brick in the ashes he left behind. He doesn't cross my mind much anymore. When he does, it's more of a footnote than a headline. I don't stalk his socials. I don't Google his name. I don't wonder how he's doing. Because I already know he's living in the fallout of his own choices. That's the thing about people who lie, who manipulate, who steal from the hands that fed them. They don't end up free. They just end up running. But me? I'm rooted. I'm still. I'm clear. I've stopped calling myself a survivor. That word always felt like something happened to me. But this was something I answered. I didn't just survive, I dismantled the damage. I replaced it with something stronger, smarter, more beautiful. I stopped trying to become the woman he wished I was, and I became the woman he never saw coming. Some nights I sit on my porch with a glass of wine, watching the sky change colors. The kids are inside, laughing, living, growing in a house that no longer holds secrets. And I think this is what healing looks like. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, clean, solid. He left thinking he'd written the ending to our story, but I'm the one holding the pen now. And my story, it's just beginning.